It began with a phone call. The kind of call no police officer ever forgets.
I need to get help. I don't know why I did it. I've never thought about doing it before. Something just got in my head. I don't know why. I just wish it was a dream so I could wake up.
We're learning new disturbing details about a murder in Osage. Court records say a 13-year-old boy accused of killing his mother also tried to sexually assault her. Gretchen Crooks was found shot to death inside her home over the weekend.
Her 13-year-old son is now officially charged of murder and assault with intent to commit sexual
On the
abuse.
evening of March 24th, 2012, the quiet town of Osage, Iowa, was already sinking into its usual stillness. The sun had long dipped beneath the endless stretch of farmland, and the houses along Cameo Avenue glowed faintly with the comfort of ordinary family routines. But at 7:31 p.m., that peace fractured. The 911 operator, Barb Michael, picked up the line and was met with a boy's voice. His tone was steady, almost unnervingly calm. "I just shot my mom." There was no hesitation, no sobbing, no trace of panic. Only a chilling clarity that sent a shiver through Barb's chest. She tried to grasp the situation, to ground herself in procedure, but the boy's voice cut through again, flat, matter of fact. "I'm not joking at all. She's dead. I'm scared. I killed my mom with my .22. I don't know why I did it. This wasn't a prank call. This wasn't confusion. It was something far darker." The boy was 13 years old. His name was Noah. And on the living room couch of a quiet farmhouse, his mother, Gretchen Crooks, lay motionless. To understand the horror of what unfolded that night, you need to know who Gretchen was. Gretchen Crooks was a woman whose life was built on compassion. A nurse, a mother, a wife, she was the sort of person who gave more than she had to spare. After graduating from Mason City High School in 1992, she worked her way through the University of Iowa's nursing program, pouring herself into a career that touched every corner of medicine, emergency care, cardiovascular recovery, inpatient wards. Her colleagues remembered her smile most of all. A nurse who could calm the chaos in the room just by being in it. When Hurricane Katrina and Rita devastated the Gulf Coast in 2005, Gretchen didn't just watch the tragedy on television. She packed her bags and went south, offering her skills to strangers who had lost everything. "I wanted to help," she said at the time. "I wanted to do something to contribute." That was Gretchen. The kind of woman who never turned away from someone in need. At home in Osage, she lived with her husband, William, and their only child, Noah. By 2012, she was still balancing her shifts at the hospital with the relentless demands of motherhood, while also working toward a master's degree in nursing administration. She was determined, tireless, and by all accounts, fiercely loving. But love is not always enough. On the night of March 24th, the Crooks household was quiet. Gretchen had made donuts for Noah earlier, a small gesture from a mother to her son. She sat on the couch with her laptop, settling into the evening. To anyone looking in from the outside, it would have seemed like a portrait of normalcy, a mother and son tucked away in their farmhouse, the sounds of rural Iowa silence around them. But in Noah's hands was a gift his mother had once bought for him. A .22 caliber rifle. From about 15 feet away, he raised the weapon. He aimed at the woman who had raised him, the woman who had given him life. And then, without warning, he pulled the trigger. Not once, not twice, but 21 times. The shots tore through the stillness of the house, echoing into the fields beyond. Neighbors later said they hadn't heard a thing, just another quiet evening in Osage. But inside, Gretchen's body collapsed against the corner of the couch. Her pajama top fell open, her chest and torso riddled with bullets. And Noah didn't stop there. After the gunfire ended, what he did next was even harder to comprehend. He tried to undress his mother, tried to assault her. And when he couldn't, he picked up the phone and dialed 911. His voice, steady, calculated, wasn't that of a child in shock. It was something colder. "I tried to rape her," he told the operator. "I tried to rape her, but I couldn't do it. Barb, the operator, listened in stunned silence. Noah repeated himself again and again, as if rehearsing a script. Then, almost like an afterthought, he added, "I just wish it was a dream so I could wake up and kiss her and hug her." As deputies rushed toward Cameo Avenue, Noah kept talking. He explained that Gretchen had recently taken away his Call of Duty video game after his grades had slipped. He told Barb something had come over him. Something he couldn't explain. "I'm never going to be able to get a good job now," he said. "I'll never get into a good college. That goes down the drain now." It was a confession dripping not with grief, but with self-pity. He seemed far more worried about his future than the fact that his mother's body was lying lifeless only a few feet away. Still on the line, he asked Barb a final question before the officers arrived. "They're not going to shoot me, are they?" While Noah waited for police, he sent his father a text. His words were short, detached. "Dad, this is Noah. I killed Mom accidentally. I regret it. Come home now, please." When William received the message, he thought it was some kind of twisted joke. His reply was half jesting, half dismissing. "Okay. Just throw her in the grove. We'll take care of her later." But there was no joke. Moments later, the phone rang again. This time, it was the police. And the reality of what his son had done came crashing down. When deputies arrived at the Crooks' residence, they knocked on the door. The boy who answered looked more like a child than a killer. He stepped outside obediently, sat on the porch steps, and waited silently as two officers pushed into the house. The scene inside stopped them cold. In the living room, Gretchen lay stretched out on the sofa, her torso riddled with bullet holes. Her pajama top gaping open, her body partially undressed. The rifle Noah had used rested in the dining room, a .22 caliber weapon his own mother had given him as a gift. The officers knew instantly, there was no saving her. What would drive a 13-year-old boy to slaughter the woman who had given him life? To not only kill her, but to violate her in death? The community of Osage would soon be forced to confront questions they never imagined asking. A family shattered. A town left to wonder what darkness had been festering in their midst. And as for Noah, his chilling words to investigators that night suggested something far more disturbing than a moment of rage. Because according to the professionals who would later evaluate him, Noah's actions weren't just impulsive. They weren't even the product of mental illness. They were something else entirely. The officers who entered the Crooks' home that night had seen tragedy before. They had walked into scenes of violence, of grief, of lives cut short in unimaginable ways. But this was different. There was something almost surreal about it, like stepping into a nightmare that had no logical explanation. A mother stretched out on the couch, her body torn apart by gunfire. A rifle abandoned just a few feet away. And outside, on the porch steps, the killer sat waiting, a 13-year-old boy with an expression that was neither fearful nor remorseful. When deputies questioned Noah, he confessed without hesitation. His words poured out with eerie precision, as though he had been rehearsing them long before he ever picked up the phone to dial 911. That night, he explained, his mother had made him donuts. She'd sat on the couch with her laptop, as she always did, immersed in her work. Nothing about the evening was unusual. Nothing suggested the storm about to break. But Noah had already made up his mind. From the other side of the room, about 15 feet away, he raised the .22 caliber rifle his mother had given him. And then, as if it were the most natural decision in the world, he opened fire. He told investigators how he shot her again and again, 21 times in total, until she slumped against the cushions. He described how he undressed her, how he tried to assault her, but couldn't go through with it. His words were delivered not with shame, but with a cold detachment that froze the blood of everyone listening. It wasn't just what Noah had done. It was the way he talked about it, logical, coherent, disturbingly calm. Word of the murder spread through Osage like wildfire. This was a small farming community where violent crime was almost unheard of, the sort of town where everyone still left their doors unlocked, where neighbors knew one another by name. the news that a 13-year-old boy had gunned down his own mother ripped through that sense of safety like a blade. Gretchen's family was devastated. Her mother, Beverly Brom, said what everyone else was struggling to put into words: "We have lost our daughter. We have lost our grandson." It was a grief with no boundaries. They had lost Gretchen, a daughter, a sister, a nurse who had devoted her life to helping others. But they had also lost Noah, the boy they had known since birth, now consumed by something they couldn't comprehend. At Mercy Medical Center, where Gretchen had worked for years, the shock was just as profound. Colleagues who had known her as a warm, tireless nurse gathered in silence, their grief spilling into statements that could barely capture the loss. Gretchen was a great nurse and leader. Our hearts and prayers go out to her family and friends. In the days that followed, as the funeral was planned and the investigation deepened, a disturbing picture of Noah began to emerge. By all outward appearances, Noah Crooks had been a typical middle schooler. He had no criminal record, no brushes with the law. His teachers described him as intelligent, if sometimes restless. Years earlier, he'd been placed on medication for ADHD and had bouts of anxiety, but nothing that would foreshadow murder. But behind closed doors, there were cracks. In 4th grade, he displayed signs of aggression. On the school bus, he'd lashed out, sometimes stabbing classmates with pencils. Friends began to notice changes in his behavior. He grew angrier, more volatile. His temper seemed to flare for reasons no one could understand. By the spring of 2012, just weeks before the murder, Noah had become darker. He spoke to friends about suicide. He talked about killing other students. He even confided to his father once, in a moment of anger, that he wanted to kill his mother. William Crooks never took it seriously. He thought it was the kind of outburst any angry kid might make, words that would dissolve into nothing. But they didn't. They festered. They grew. And on March 24th, they became reality. For investigators, the question wasn't whether Noah had killed his mother. He admitted it without hesitation. The question was why. And the answer was far more unsettling than anyone imagined. In the weeks after the shooting, psychiatrists and psychologists were brought in to evaluate Noah. What they found was chilling. Dr. Michael Taylor, a psychiatrist, sat with the boy and listened as Noah recounted the hours leading up to the murder. He noted that Noah described it calmly, with no flicker of remorse. According to Dr. Taylor, Noah didn't kill his mother in the heat of the moment. He didn't act in a blind rage. He killed her because he wanted to. Noah was able to calmly and without any change in his demeanor whatsoever describe for me the hours in which he decided to shoot his mother, Dr. Taylor later said. He felt he didn't need his mother. Other experts agreed. Dr. Anna Salter, a psychologist, examined Noah and concluded that he showed traits almost impossible to treat: a lack of conscience, a total absence of empathy, extreme callousness. She believed his actions weren't an accident or a symptom of illness. They were the product of something far more deeply ingrained. It was not done in the heat of the moment, she said. There are no indications that he was psychotic or even upset at the time of the shooting. To the professionals who studied him, Noah wasn't suffering from schizophrenia or any diagnosable psychiatric disorder that could explain away his violence. He wasn't out of touch with reality. He knew exactly what he was doing. And that raised a terrifying possibility, that inside this 13-year-old boy lived something far colder, something untethered to human empathy. But the defense painted a different picture. They argued Noah was a boy plagued by intermittent explosive disorder, a behavioral condition marked by sudden, uncontrollable bursts of violence. They claimed he snapped after his mother took away his Xbox game, Call of Duty, punishing him for slipping grades. This wasn't the act of a cold-blooded killer, they insisted, but of a troubled child overwhelmed by impulses he couldn't control. And when the trial began, it became clear that the jury would face an impossible question. Was Noah Crooks a sick boy in need of treatment? Or was he something else entirely, a predator in the body of a child? At Gretchen's funeral, mourners filled the pews of First Congregational Church in Mason City. The atmosphere was heavy with grief, but also confusion. How could they honor a woman whose life had been stolen so brutally, while grappling with the fact that her killer was her own son? Reverend Paul Schaefer tried to offer comfort, reminding the crowd that Gretchen's faith had given her strength. Her brother, Jason, spoke through tears, recalling their childhood arguments and the love that had bound them anyway. His young daughter whispered what everyone already knew, that Gretchen had been the best aunt she could have asked for. But as the hymns echoed through the church and mourners wiped away tears, one question lingered in the silence, unanswered and unspoken. If Noah could do this at 13, what would he be capable of as a man? The courtroom held its breath as the trial of Noah Crooks unfolded. The boy who once laughed over video games, who had been the center of his mother's world, was now at the heart of one of the darkest cases Iowa had ever seen. Noah's defense tried to paint a picture of a troubled child unraveling under the weight of emotional instability. They brought forward doctors, specialists, and fragments of his past, attempting to prove that what happened that day was not the act of a calculated killer, but the tragic breakdown of a mind too young to fully understand consequence. But the evidence was difficult to ignore. The 911 call in Noah's own voice, flat, detached, almost chilling in its casualness, echoed through the courtroom when played for the jury. His words carried no urgency, no fear, no sorrow. Just a boy describing how he had tried to rape his mother and failed, before shooting her multiple times. Those words alone were enough to freeze every soul in that room. The prosecution leaned heavily on this. They argued that this was not the slip of an unstable child, but a deliberate, violent act against the one person who had given him everything. They pointed out how Noah had attempted to access pornography before the murder, how he had spoken of wanting to kill in the past, and how he had aimed for his mother's head and chest with accuracy. These weren't the impulses of a confused boy, they claimed. These were the decisions of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Yet, even as the facts grew darker, many still struggled with the image of Noah as a murderer. He was only 13. Too young, some thought, to even fully grasp death. Too young to be facing words like life sentence. The jury had to carry that burden. They had to decide whether Noah Crooks was a child who had lost control, or a monster in the making. When the verdict was finally read, the tension shattered. The jury found Noah Crooks guilty of second-degree murder in the death of his mother, Gina. He was acquitted of attempted sexual assault. The weight of that decision carried through the room like a cold wind. Noah showed little emotion as the words sank in. No tears. No visible regret. Just the same unsettling calm that had defined his presence since that horrific day. For Gretchen's family, the verdict offered some justice, but no true closure. They had lost a daughter, a sister, a mother, and in a way, they had lost Noah too. The boy they once loved was gone, replaced by someone they no longer recognized. Noah was sentenced to 50 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 35. He will spend the majority of his life behind bars, carrying the shadow of what he did at just 13 years old. The case left Iowa shaken, and the wider world stunned. It forced people to question how darkness could take root in someone so young. Was Noah simply born with something broken inside him? Or had subtle cracks in his world gone unnoticed until they finally shattered in the most violent way imaginable? To this day, the story of Noah Crooks serves as a chilling reminder that evil doesn't always arrive in the form of strangers lurking in the night. Sometimes, it grows quietly inside the walls of a family home, hidden behind the face of a child who should have had his whole life ahead of him. And for Gretchen Crooks, her life ended not at the hands of an enemy, but by the very person she had devoted herself to protecting.